What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Hello and welcome to the For Amusement Only EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. My name is Nicholas Baldridge, and I'll be your guide and shepherd, I suppose, through the world of EMs and bingos. This episode, I'm just going to do a few quick words about myself and how I got into pinball, what the attraction is to bingos and EMs in general for me, how I enjoy repair, and some other topics that this podcast might cover. I got into pinball when I was very young, about 4 years old. I remember playing Pinbot for the first time and just falling in love with the lights and the sounds and the robot's visor that opens. I've always been very interested in robots and electrical toys, mechanical toys, just about anything that would act like an automaton or have some level of interaction with the user. So pinball was obviously a big draw when I was young and all the way up to the present day. Whenever I found pinball on location, I'd always drop in quarters, despite, friends of mine who geared more towards the video end of the spectrum. I'm only 32 years old. I know that can seem old to some, but in the circles where I travel with these EMs and bingos, I'm rather young. As far as bingos, my wife worked with a guy, and he happened to have some pinball machines, and he asked one day if I'd like to come over and play them, and of course I said, yeah. He had a couple of more modern machines, and in the back, he had these fascinating bingo machines. Now, I had never seen one of these before, or even heard of their existence, and to be quite honest, I didn't really get them the first time that I played them. I went back to the back, fired it up. He showed me very simply how to win. On a bingo card, you get 3, 4, or 5 in a row. Really couldn't be more straightforward than that. Of course, the trick is nudging the ball appropriately without tilting into the correct spot. So I didn't really get it. What's the attraction here? It took a few tries until I actually won, and then I understood. It all kind of clicked. It's like winning a replay on a modern game. You get that knock or that shrill noise that the modern Sterns make, and you feel good. You feel like you've accomplished something. Well, it's the same with the bingo. Once you get a hit that pays off, and you've got those games racking up, and you realize what this whole thing is about. So I was able to take that and parlay it into helping him fix a couple of really minor problems, and he showed me, everything about the insides of them, and I was fascinated by just how complex these machines are. They really are mechanical computers that were made in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, long before the era of solid state. Of course, they make solid state bingos today over in Belgium, and I have to imagine that they don't weigh very much. These bingos, the ones that I've repaired anyway, weigh upwards of 200 to 300 pounds just in the back box. They are very, very heavy. They have an awful lot of mechanical devices inside. And this podcast will be going over some of those devices and what exactly they do, also what effect they have on the gameplay. On top of that, I wanted to talk about saving bingos. I see chatter often, and I've certainly been to shows where bingos don't sell, even in project form, and then they're just left to rot. There are a few things sadder to me than seeing something that could be salvageable and maybe a fun player left in the dust. I feel like if people were educated on how bingo gameplay worked, just as I was not to begin with, then they might understand the appeal, the attraction of these games, and maybe want to have one in their collection. And at the very least, have an appreciation if they run across any from time to time. So that brings me to EMs and EM games in general. And again, this is kind of a situation where I feel like there is little appreciation with people my age and younger. these EM games are certainly as fun as anything modern. They have fewer flashing lights, but they have many gameplay tricks, a lot of which come back into fashion with these modern games, and you'll see those same kind of interesting hooks employed today that were employed back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even in the 40s and 30s. Now, I have an appreciation for wood rails, and I have an appreciation for games from the 30s as well, and I'll certainly be talking about those on this podcast. The other thing, I love to fix these games. I love to read schematics. I love figuring out how the designer and the engineers were able to create these wonderful, fun devices. There are a few things more satisfying than repairing a machine, bringing it back to life after it's been dead. And with an EM, that's relatively simple. All you have to do is make sure all the parts are there, and then start cleaning and tweaking, and then before you know it, you'll hear that fabulous click, where it either takes your credit or it takes your coin and starts the machine up. Now, as far as other topics on this podcast, I do have machines ranging from the 30s to the 90s. And so from time to time, I'll be talking about repair on these more modern machines. And so lastly, in this inaugural episode, I wanted to talk about what For Amusement Only means to me. If you've seen an EM or a more modern game, you'll notice in the apron on the scorecards or instruction cards, they'll have For Amusement Only printed. Well, that was a reaction, in part, to bingos and the gambling that went on in the 30s and even before then with the purely mechanical pinball machines. On bingos, at least the ones that I've seen and played and fixed up, if you look between the back box and the playfield, tucked way in the back, there's a tiny paper label that says For Amusement Only. So gambling with bingos was kind of a way of life. So that's all for this episode, and look out for future episodes. I'll be talking in depth about how these machines work, how to fix them from time to time. We might have interviews like with the fellow that I was talking about that got me into bingos. I'm hoping to have him on soon. And other people in the hobby, and what kind of role, what they think of EMs, and how they enjoy playing them, their favorite games, and so on and so forth. So I look forward to talking to you in the future, and thanks very much. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, and you can find us online at foramusementonly.libsyn.com.